Deep within the lush, tropical rainforests of Southeast Asia, in countries like Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Papua New Guinea, grows a fascinating tree known as Mitragyna speciosa. More commonly referred to as Kratom, this evergreen tree is a member of the same botanical family as the coffee plant, Rubiaceae. It thrives in the hot, humid climate, often reaching towering heights of up to 50 feet or about 15 meters. For centuries, the indigenous peoples of these regions have held a deep and traditional relationship with this plant, understanding its properties long before it ever reached the awareness of the Western world. Its large, green leaves have been a staple in traditional medicine and daily life for generations. The historical use of kratom is deeply woven into the cultural fabric of Southeast Asia. Traditionally, laborers and farmers would chew on the fresh kratom leaves throughout their long, physically demanding workdays. They believed that doing so helped them endure fatigue, increase their physical stamina, and manage the aches and pains that came with strenuous manual labor under the tropical sun. This practice was not seen as recreational but as a practical tool to improve productivity and well-being. The leaves were a natural part of their environment, a resource provided by the forest that offered tangible benefits for their daily survival and comfort, much like how other cultures might use coffee or tea. Beyond its use for physical endurance, kratom also played a role in social and medicinal contexts. In some communities, the leaves would be brewed into a tea and shared among villagers during social gatherings, fostering a sense of community and relaxation. Traditional healers would also prepare kratom concoctions to treat a variety of common ailments, from diarrhea and fever to managing pain from minor injuries. This long-standing traditional use demonstrates a complex understanding of the plant and its effects, passed down through generations. The knowledge was empirical, based on observation and experience, forming a cornerstone of local folk medicine, long before scientific analysis began to explore its chemical makeup. Today, as the world turns its attention to this ancient plant, we are beginning to understand the science behind these traditional practices. The journey of kratom from a regional folk remedy to a globally discussed substance is a compelling story of botany, chemistry, and human health. The very leaves that were once chewed by farmers in remote villages are now being dried, crushed into powder, and shipped across continents. Understanding its origins and traditional context is crucial as we navigate the complex conversation surrounding its modern-day use, its potential benefits, and the very real risks that have made it a subject of intense debate and scientific scrutiny around the globe. The remarkable effects of the kratom leaf are not due to magic, but to chemistry. The leaves are rich in a class of naturally occurring chemical compounds known as alkaloids. While scientists have identified over 40 different alkaloids in kratom, 2 have emerged as the primary actors responsible for its most significant effects: mitragynine and 7-hydroxymitragynine. Mitragynine is the most abundant alkaloid, making up a significant portion of the leaf's chemical profile. The second compound, 7-hydroxymitragynine, is present in much smaller quantities but is believed to be substantially more potent, playing a crucial role in the plant's more powerful sedative-like effects. These compounds are the key to unlocking the mystery of how kratom works. When a person consumes kratom, these alkaloids travel through the bloodstream and cross the blood-brain barrier, where they go on to interact with the body's complex neurological systems. Specifically, mitragynine and 7-hydroxymitragynine bind to the same cellular targets as opioid drugs like morphine and oxycodone. These targets are known as opioid receptors, which are proteins located on the surface of nerve cells throughout the brain, spinal cord, and other parts of the body. When activated, these receptors are responsible for mediating feelings of pain relief, pleasure, and sedation. This interaction is the fundamental reason why kratom can produce effects that are often described as being opioid-like. However, the way kratom alkaloids interact with these receptors appears to be different and more complex than traditional opioids. While they activate the pathways that lead to pain relief, emerging research suggests they may not as strongly trigger the other pathways that are responsible for some of the most dangerous side effects of conventional opioids. For instance, a critical distinction is that kratom alkaloids do not seem to initiate the severe respiratory depression, a dangerous slowing of breathing, that is the primary cause of fatal overdoses from drugs like heroin or fentanyl. This unique mechanism of action has captured the attention of scientists who see a potential for developing safer pain medications. This distinct biochemical behavior is what makes kratom such a subject of intense scientific interest and public debate. It is not a classic opioid, yet it engages with the opioid system. It mimics some of the desirable effects, such as pain relief, but potentially without the same level of life-threatening risk. Understanding this nuanced pharmacology is essential. The complex dance between these alkaloids and the brain's receptors is what gives kratom its dual nature, capable of producing vastly different outcomes depending on how much is consumed. This chemical complexity is at the heart of both its potential promise and its inherent peril. One of the most defining characteristics of kratom is that its effects are profoundly dose-dependent. This means that the experience of using kratom can change dramatically depending on the amount consumed. At lower doses, typically just a few grams of dried leaf, kratom acts primarily as a stimulant. Users often report feeling more energetic, alert, and sociable. Their heart rate may increase, and they may experience a heightened sense of focus and motivation. This stimulating effect is consistent with the traditional use by laborers in Southeast Asia, who chewed small amounts of the fresh leaves to combat fatigue and power through long days of physical work, much like someone in the West might drink a cup of strong coffee. As the dose increases, however, the character of kratom's effects begins to shift dramatically. At higher doses, the stimulant properties fade into the background, and sedative effects become dominant. Users may experience profound feelings of calmness, relaxation, and a sense of tranquil well-being. It is at these higher dosages that the plant's significant pain-relieving or analgesic properties become most apparent. People seeking relief from chronic pain or anxiety are more likely to use kratom in these larger quantities. This sedative state can lead to drowsiness and a dreamlike feeling, which is why it has also been used traditionally to aid with sleep or to manage withdrawal from other substances. The method of consumption also plays a role in the onset and duration of these effects. Traditionally, people would chew the fresh leaves, allowing for a gradual release of the alkaloids. Today, the most common method is to use dried, crushed leaf powder. This powder can be mixed with water or juice and consumed as a beverage, often called a toss and wash, or brewed into a tea. It is also frequently packed into capsules or made into concentrated extracts. When ingested, the effects typically begin within 10 to 20 minutes and can last for several hours, with the peak experience occurring within the first couple of hours depending on the dose and individual metabolism. This dual nature, acting as a stimulant at low doses and a sedative at high doses, makes kratom a uniquely versatile substance, but also a potentially confusing and unpredictable one for new users. The line between a stimulating boost and a powerful sedative state can be thin, and it varies from person to person. Understanding this dose-dependent activity is absolutely critical for anyone considering its use. It explains why one person might describe kratom as an energizing supplement, while another describes it as a potent painkiller and sedative. The plant truly has two different faces, and the one it shows depends entirely on how much of it is used. The world is currently grappling with a devastating opioid crisis, a public health emergency that affects an estimated 60 million people globally, and results in over 100,000 deaths each year. In this desperate search for solutions, kratom has emerged as a subject of intense interest and debate. Many individuals who are struggling with addiction to powerful opioids like heroin, fentanyl, or prescription painkillers have turned to kratom as a tool for self-management. They report that using kratom helps them mitigate the excruciating symptoms of opiate withdrawal, which can include severe muscle aches, nausea, insomnia, and intense cravings. For them, kratom is not a recreational drug but a lifeline. The rationale behind using kratom for opioid withdrawal is rooted in its unique pharmacology. As we've discussed, its primary alkaloids, mitragynine and 7-hydroxymitragynine, bind to the brain's opioid receptors. This action can effectively trick the brain into thinking it is still receiving opioids, thereby easing the physical and psychological distress of withdrawal without producing the same intense, high, or dangerous side effects. Anecdotal reports from thousands of users suggest that kratom can make the transition away from more dangerous substances more bearable, allowing them to stabilize their lives, maintain employment, and begin the long road to recovery outside of a formal clinical setting. This grassroots use has prompted the scientific community to take a closer look. Preliminary research is exploring whether kratom or its isolated alkaloids could be developed into a formal treatment for opioid use disorder. Some early studies have suggested that mitragynine might be more effective and safer than methadone, a long-standing treatment for opiate addiction. A key finding is that Kratom alkaloids do not appear to recruit a protein called beta-arrestin in the same way that traditional opioids do. This is significant because the recruitment of beta-arrestin is linked to both respiratory depression and the development of tolerance, two of the most problematic aspects of opioid use. Despite this potential, the use of Kratom for opioid withdrawal remains highly controversial. Many medical professionals and regulatory agencies express caution, pointing out that Kratom itself can be habit-forming and has its own withdrawal symptoms. They argue that substituting one dependency for another is not a true solution, and that unregulated self-treatment is fraught with risks. Nonetheless, for the countless individuals who feel they have been failed by the conventional medical system, Kratom represents a tangible form of harm reduction. They see it as a less dangerous alternative that has allowed them to reclaim their lives from the grip of a far more destructive addiction. In addition to its role in addiction management, Kratom is gaining significant attention as a potential alternative for pain relief. Chronic pain affects millions of people worldwide, often diminishing their quality of life and leading to a reliance on prescription opioid painkillers. However, these medications carry a high risk of addiction, tolerance, and life-threatening side effects like respiratory depression. The search for safer, non-addictive analgesics is, honestly, one of the most urgent missions in modern medicine. Kratom, with its long history of traditional use for managing aches and pains, has naturally become a candidate in this search, offering a potential solution that comes from a plant rather than a pharmaceutical lab. Many individuals suffering from conditions like arthritis, fibromyalgia, back pain, and nerve damage have reported finding significant relief by using Kratom. They often state that it allows them to manage their pain effectively without the cognitive fogginess or debilitating side effects associated with prescription opioids. For these users, Kratom is not about seeking a high, but about achieving a level of functionality that allows them to perform daily activities, go to work, and engage with their families. They are turning to Kratom as a form of self-medication because they feel that the existing options are either ineffective or just too dangerous for long-term use. Scientific investigation into Kratom's pain-relieving properties is still in its early stages, but the initial findings are promising. Research has confirmed that the alkaloids in Kratom do indeed have analgesic effects by acting on the body's opioid receptors. The key area of interest for scientists is the possibility of isolating or synthesizing compounds based on Kratom's alkaloids that could retain the pain-relieving benefits while minimizing the potential for addiction and other harmful side effects. The goal would be to develop a new class of painkillers that could help prevent opioid addictions from starting in the first place by providing a safer first-line treatment for moderate to severe pain. However, the path from a traditional botanical to a clinically approved medication is long and complex. While anecdotal evidence is compelling, it is not a substitute for rigorous, controlled scientific trials. Researchers need to determine effective and safe dosages, fully understand the long-term health impacts, and identify any potential negative interactions with other medications. The promise of Kratom as a revolutionary pain reliever is, well, tantalizing, but it is a promise that can only be fulfilled through careful and comprehensive scientific inquiry. Until then, its use for pain remains a personal choice made by individuals weighing the potential benefits against the known and unknown risks. While many users report positive experiences with Kratom, it's crucial to acknowledge that its use is not without risks. The potential for adverse effects exists, ranging from mild and uncomfortable to, severe and life-threatening. Among the more common, milder side effects are dry mouth, nausea, constipation, and dizziness, especially for new users or when taking a higher dose than usual. Some people also experience agitation, a racing heart rate, or drowsiness and confusion. These effects are often dose-dependent and can typically be managed by reducing the amount consumed or discontinuing use. But they really highlight that this plant is a powerful substance that affects the body in multiple ways. Of greater concern are the more serious side effects that have been associated with frequent, high-dose Kratom use. There have been reports linking Kratom to significant health problems, including liver damage, which can manifest as jaundice or, in rare cases, liver failure. Other serious potential risks include seizures, breathing problems, and significant psychological issues such as hallucinations, delusions, and severe depression. Long-term heavy use has also been anecdotally linked to issues like significant weight loss, muscle pain, and changes in behavior, including increased aggression or emotional instability. These reports really underscore the need for caution and medical supervision when considering long-term use. The question of overdose is, well, complex and highly debated. While a fatal overdose from Kratom alone is considered to be extremely rare, it's not impossible, especially with highly concentrated extracts. The United States Food and Drug Administration has attributed a number of deaths to Kratom use. However, it's important to note that in the vast majority of these reported cases, the individuals were found to have other harmful substances in their system, such as illicit drugs, prescription opioids, or alcohol. This makes it very difficult for coroners and scientists to determine the exact role that Kratom played in the fatality. Was it the primary cause, a contributing factor, or merely incidental? Furthermore, because Kratom acts on the opioid receptors, it has the potential to be habit-forming, and regular users can develop a physical dependence. Discontinuing use after a period of heavy consumption can lead to a withdrawal syndrome characterized by symptoms like muscle aches, irritability, insomnia, and emotional distress. While these withdrawal symptoms are generally considered to be less severe than those from traditional opioids, they can still be highly unpleasant and challenging to manage. This risk of dependence is a major reason why regulatory bodies remain wary of Kratom and stress that it should not be viewed as a completely harmless herbal supplement. The legal status of Kratom around the world is, honestly, a confusing and inconsistent patchwork of regulations, reflecting the deep division in opinion about its safety and utility. At the international level, Kratom is not currently controlled under the United Nations Drug Control Conventions, meaning there is no global consensus or mandate for its prohibition. This leaves individual countries to decide how they want to regulate the plant. As a result, a person can cross a border and go from a place where Kratom is legally sold in shops to a place where possessing it could lead to a lengthy prison sentence. This lack of uniformity creates significant challenges for consumers, researchers, and policymakers alike. In its native Southeast Asia, the laws vary dramatically. Thailand, where Kratom has a long history of traditional use, once banned the plant in 1943. However, in a major policy reversal, the country decriminalized Kratom in 2021, recognizing its cultural significance and potential for harm reduction. Conversely, neighboring Malaysia and Singapore maintain strict prohibitions, where trafficking or even possessing Kratom can result in severe legal penalties. In other parts of the world, many European countries, including Denmark, Sweden, and Poland, have classified Kratom as a controlled substance, making it illegal. Yet in places like the Netherlands and Germany, it remains legal to purchase and possess. The situation in the United States is particularly complex, as legality is determined on a state-by-state, and sometimes even city-by-city basis. At the federal level, the Drug Enforcement Administration has considered classifying Kratom as a Schedule I controlled substance, the most restrictive category alongside drugs like heroin and LSD, but has so far backed away from a nationwide ban following significant public and scientific pushback. As it stands, Kratom remains legal under federal law. However, several states, including Alabama, Arkansas, Indiana, and Wisconsin, have passed their own laws to ban the substance completely. In other states, it is legal and widely available for purchase. This inconsistent legal landscape creates a great deal of uncertainty and risk. For researchers, it can create barriers to conducting the scientific studies that are desperately needed to fully understand the plant's effects. For consumers, it means that access to a substance they may rely on for their health and well-being could disappear overnight with a change in legislation. The ongoing debate pits advocates who champion personal freedom and harm reduction against regulators who prioritize public safety and caution. The future of Kratom's legal status will likely depend on the outcomes of emerging scientific research and the shifting tides of public opinion. In Western countries where it remains legal, such as the United States and parts of Europe, Kratom has exploded in popularity, creating a booming and honestly largely unregulated market. It's often sold online and in specialty shops, sometimes called smoke shops or head shops, and is typically marketed as a natural health supplement, an herbal remedy, or a botanical wellness product. An estimated 5 million people in the United States alone are believed to be regular users. This commercial market presents Kratom in a way that can be misleading, often using appealing packaging and product names that suggest a level of safety and consistency that is not guaranteed. Sellers often market different strains of Kratom, typically color-coded as red, green, or white vein, based on the color of the veins in the leaf at the time of harvest. Red vein strains are generally marketed as being more sedating and pain-relieving, white vein strains as more stimulating and energizing, and green vein strains as a balance between the two. However, scientific analysis has shown that there is often very little chemical difference between these so-called strains. The effects are far more dependent on the dosage, the specific batch, and an individual's own body chemistry than on the supposed color of the leaf vein. This lack of regulation is really the single greatest safety concern for consumers in the West. Because Kratom is typically sold as a botanical supplement rather than a drug, it's not subject to the strict quality and safety standards mandated by agencies like the Food and Drug Administration. This means that the product a consumer buys can vary wildly in its potency and purity. The alkaloid content can differ significantly from one batch to the next, making it difficult for users to take a consistent dose. This increases the risk of experiencing unwanted side effects or even a potential overdose, as a spoonful from a new bag could be much stronger than from a previous one. Even more troubling is the risk of contamination. Without mandatory testing and oversight, there is no guarantee that the Kratom powder being sold is pure. There have been multiple documented cases where Kratom products were found to be contaminated with dangerous substances, including heavy metals like lead and nickel, as well as pathogenic bacteria such as Salmonella. In some alarming instances, unregulated Kratom products have been secretly adulterated with powerful synthetic opioids to make them feel stronger. This Wild West environment places the burden of safety entirely on the consumer, who has no reliable way of knowing exactly what is in the product they are ingesting. The conversation surrounding Kratom is, honestly, a perfect example of a complex modern health dilemma, positioned uncomfortably between traditional medicine and scientific scrutiny, between personal autonomy and public safety. On one hand, we have countless personal testimonies and a long history of traditional use, suggesting it can be a valuable tool for pain management and for helping people escape the deadly grip of opioid addiction. These stories of lives saved and suffering eased cannot be ignored. They represent a genuine human need that, for many, is not being met by the conventional medical system. This grassroots movement underscores a powerful demand for alternative solutions. On the other hand, we have legitimate and serious concerns from the medical and regulatory communities. The lack of rigorous scientific data on long-term health effects, the potential for dependence, and the documented risks of side effects and contamination are all valid reasons for caution. The unregulated market exposes consumers to unknown dangers, and the opioid-like mechanism of action rightly raises red flags for public health officials tasked with preventing the next drug crisis. To dismiss these concerns as simple fear-mongering would be irresponsible. The primary mission of public health is to protect the population, and that requires a conservative approach to unknown substances. The only logical path forward through this polarized debate is one that embraces both research and sensible regulation. We urgently need more high-quality, independent scientific studies to definitively answer the critical questions about Kratom. We need to understand its full therapeutic potential, establish safe dosing guidelines, identify long-term risks, and explore its potential for drug development. Banning the substance outright would drive it underground, making it more dangerous and halting this vital research. Leaving it completely unregulated is equally untenable, as it continues to put consumers at risk from inconsistent and potentially contaminated products. A balanced approach would involve implementing a regulatory framework that ensures product safety and purity through mandatory testing for potency and contaminants. It would require clear and accurate labeling, providing consumers with the information they need to make informed decisions. This would treat Kratom not as a dangerous narcotic to be banned, nor as a harmless health food, but as what it is, a powerful botanical substance that requires respect, understanding, and caution. By navigating this middle path, we can work to harness Kratom's potential benefits while minimizing its inherent risks, a goal that serves the best interests of everyone.